Well, free agency is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get in that first week. Last year it was Monday that was wild for the 49ers. That's when Javon Hargrave signed at what? For me it was 12:20 p.m. I was in Central Time, so I'm guessing for most of you in Pacific Time it was 10:20 a.m. that shocking news came through. The 49ers had made another big marquee signing. And that was last year. Monday wasn't as eventful this year. This first week saw Wednesday, first day of the new league year, and today, Friday, as the two wild days. So we sit here now on Friday evening, ready to recap. First off, the 49ers still have 22 roster spots open. They've added 6 players today. They opened the day with 28 roster spots down to 22. They've done some big time restructuring. They've got $12 million of off-season salary cap space left. I'm going to go through an explainer of how this salary cap space works and where the 49ers have spent, where they haven't spent, where they've actually saved some money because they're having to cut back on the spending at the same time that they're pouring water into the sink. It's a sink that has the faucet and it's got a drain, and you have to make sure that the faucet and the drain are both working to stay salary cap sustainable. Then we're going to talk about other stuff like John Feliciano's last dance. This is what John Feliciano posted today. He re-signed with the 49ers. And on Instagram, he said, last ride, hashtag faithful, hashtag bang bang Niner gang, hashtag year 10. John Feliciano entering year 10 in the NFL. And here he is jogging out onto the field in year 9. He was a good guard for the 49ers. He overtook Spencer Burford for that right guard spot. This was a big re-signing for San Francisco, given how wild the guard market has gotten. The fact that the 49ers were able to get Feliciano, I don't know the rate yet, but I'm guessing $5 million, somewhere around there, not too much more. The fact the 49ers were able to do that was a coup for this team. Consider the fact that the Rams, who obviously picked up Jimmy Garoppolo today, the Rams had to pay $16 million per year for both of their starting guards, and they're shifting one of their guards, Steve Avila, to center. So everybody's talking about the Rams' offensive line. I feel a lot of the media just automatically thinks this is going to be the best offensive line that football has ever seen. But the problem is that both of the Rams' guards, Kevin Dotson and Jonah Jackson, both of those guys have non-remarkable pass protection numbers. So we'll see how the Rams are able to protect Stafford, protect Jimmy Garoppolo if Jimmy does have to play. But to me, they invested a whole heck of a lot in that offensive line. And based on how much money they put into it, they better see spectacular results. Because the 49ers, meanwhile, were able to pick up this guy right here, John Feliciano, who was the number 2 graded zone blocker in all of football last year, behind only Chris Lindstrom, who's actually the highest paid guard in football. Feliciano trailed him. One is not like the other in terms of the paycheck, though. Feliciano, like I said, I would be shocked if this were more than $5 million. Lindstrom is at $21.5 million and is the most expensive guard in football. So the 49ers, the theme of this free agency has been value. Value, value, value. Build the team at the margins. They already have a really high ceiling because they have more superstars than any other team in the league. It was about improving and raising the floor for the 49ers. And raising the floor means that you have to improve the margins. Guys, if you have 10 superstars, which I think no team in the league has, but even if you had 10, you're still going to have to roster 43 unremarkable players, at least in comparison to that. So even the most star-studded football team is majority made up of the glue. I call it the glue pieces. The superstars are great, but football is an awesome sport because it's not as easy to stock your entire roster like basketball with all-stars. The all-stars in football, no matter how talented of a team, are still going to be in a minority on that football team. So it is just as important to make sure that you can collectively raise the floor of the football team at the lower paid margins as it is that you stock up on star power. And I think leaving the 2023 season, the 49ers were getting dangerously top heavy. They had to go in there and rebuild the foundation. And part of the foundation is John Feliciano. He's a really good guard for them last year. And I think that this is a twofold effort. I think they need to raise the ceiling of the offensive line. I think they need to add more talent into that room. Trent Williams, by the way, at left tackle, 35 years old. I mean, you have to find a way to become more sustainable. But the only way you can do that at a cost-efficient price is to use the draft. And the only way that you can use the draft in a win-now year, because draft picks aren't often going to wow everybody in their rookie season, the only way you can do that is to set your floor high enough so you could take a swing on the draft pick and let him develop. So that's exactly what the 49ers have set up along their offensive line. 35-year-old Trent Williams at left tackle. Aaron Banks entering his final season of the rookie deal at left guard. Jake Brendel, veteran center. John Feliciano entering year 10, pictured there. Probably his last year, if you believe this Instagram post. He said it's his last ride. And Colton McKivitz, who they extended. Swing tackle money for Colton McKivitz. As of today, if the 49ers played a game today, yes, Colton McKivitz would be the starter. But no, the 49ers don't play a game today, which is why a lot of these discussions are completely idiotic. 49ers play a game in about 6 months. They have more time to structure their roster. Maybe Colton McKivitz will be the starter at right tackle in week 1. Maybe he won't be. But I am fairly certain that the 49ers are not done investing in their offensive line. And I do know they need more than 5 quality bodies up front. I also know that very rarely, maybe never, has a team gone through the entire marathon of an NFL season, starting the same exact 5 guys throughout the entire thing. You really, really need depth at that position, and the 49ers, with Feliciano signing today, have set themselves up to procure it. We got the ironic Chase Lucas, De'Vondre Campbell beef. So this is funny. This is going to be interesting. The 49ers signed Chase Lucas today, who played for the Detroit Lions over the past 2 years. I think he's a favorite to be their starting gunner. But meanwhile, the 49ers signed Chris Conley, too, who's awesome in punt coverage in the Super Bowl. 2 big stops. So the 49ers, who didn't have great special teams last year, have re-signed Conley, and they've added Chase Lucas. But to me, this is ironic because Lucas is a DB, and he was in a little bit of a shoving match, a little bit of a yelling match after the NFC Championship game. Have a look at this. You don't see Lucas all too well, but you'll see Demo Lenore.
Don't film me. Don't film me. Don't film me.
So you couldn't really see Chase Lucas, but when that was in that shoving match, then it was Lenore and Lucas going after each other. Now they're teammates. The reason this is ironic is because how Chase Lucas ends up doing for the 49ers this year, as far as playing in the secondary, might really impact what De'Vondre Lenore has for his role in the defensive backfield. Chase Lucas has worked with the nickelbacks in Detroit over the past 2 seasons. If you look at his metrics, he's better relatively at the 10-yard burst, at the broad jump, at the vertical jump, at all the short area explosive metrics than he is at the 40-yard dash, which means that his skill set is probably better suited to play at inside cornerback. The 49ers had De'Vondre Lenore playing slot last year. They rather would not have him play slot. I think they'd rather have him on the outside and not have that sense of what are we going to do on the inside, but they had to do it because Isaiah Oliver didn't pan out. Chase Lucas seems to be one of the options for the 49ers to compete at slot, and I do think he's a leading option to be gunner on special teams, which is really, really important for this football team. But when you look at Lenore's future, he'd rather be on the outside. I think that, as he comes up here, he's eligible for a new contract right now. I don't think that he's on the list to get paid this offseason, but I think he wants to play on the outside more. Nickelback is the most chronically underpaid position in the league. I think it's even worse than running back. It gets doesn't get a whole lot of fanfare. It doesn't get a whole lot of talk about the fact that the nickelback salaries are much lower than cornerbacks. But if De'Vondre Lenore can have it anyway, he'd rather play more outside cornerback this season. And maybe, just maybe, Chase Lucas is somebody that can help him do that. There's also another guy on this 49ers team that would create a different type of dynamic, and it is the new cornerback, Isaac Yiadom. This guy, he might be the steal of free agency. We absolutely have to show another XY graph because this one blew me away. I saw this and I'm like, oh, well, 49ers press coverage on the x-axis and then yards per coverage snap when in press coverage on the y-axis. So you want to be further to the right if you're a team that likes to run press coverage. You want to have a guy that is familiar with running it, but you also want to have a dot that is further up, vertical. Look who's here in the upper right quadrant. Isaac Yiadom played a ton of press coverage for the Saints last year. And you talk about him potentially being the steal of the draft. Well, did I say steal of free agency? It's not the draft. He's 28 years old. I misspoke there, but at least I didn't type it down wrong. You talk about him being the steal of free agency. He was pretty bad for several years in the NFL. And then all of a sudden, last season with the New Orleans Saints, Isaac Yiadom just completely blew the top off. I mean, this guy, 14 pass breakups, started for only about half the season, was amongst the league leaders in those pass breakups, had a couple interceptions to his name, strong frame, long arms, 32.25-inch arms, gave up a passer rating of only 84 into his coverage, which is really good. Strong at the point of attack. I mean, he's got that wiry muscle to him, but the point of catch, Isaac Yiadom was like your anti-Ambry Thomas, especially Ambry when he was a rookie. But even in the playoffs, Ambry Thomas had a ball wrestled away from him. You don't see any of that happening to this new 49ers cornerback, Isaac Yiadom, to the point where, he started the last 7-8 games for the New Orleans Saints, and they had a sneaky good secondary last year. His forced incompletion rate, 30.4%, led the entire NFL. And the 49ers, it appears, were able to find him at a bargain signing. We don't know the exact numbers yet. Those should come in within the next few days. But to me, this wasn't this splash signing, that would accompany a star cornerback. But the guy played like a really, really good corner last year. The PFF grade ranked number 16 in the whole league, 80.4. The 49ers aren't looking to reinvent the wheel here. The 49ers are looking for somebody to be a dependable outside cornerback on the downs that De'Vondre Campbell moves inside in the nickel package. Last year, they didn't have that dependability. Ambry Thomas wasn't giving it to him. And I think that was a big sore spot of this defense. So, again, this is typically not something that you find in a player who has, only played well in 1 year. And it's not something that you find. You don't find this type of player available in free agency a few days in. The 49ers obviously are going to take sample size into account. That's why they didn't offer this guy a 5-year deal. But it will be fascinating to see if Isaac Yiadom lives up to this early steal of free agency supposition. He was with the Denver Broncos to begin his career, 2017 and 2018, or maybe 2018 and 2019. And in 2019, Vic Fangio, head coach of the Broncos, he had an assistant coach named Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley was working with the edge rushers, the outside linebackers of the Broncos. So Staley was on the staff when Isaac Yiadom was on the team, and now Staley is the 49ers assistant head coach. And, we could talk so much about Brandon Staley and the philosophy he might bring. Justin Simmons, the safety, was with the Denver Broncos at the time as well when Staley was there. And the 49ers are probably, I think they saw some level of increased creativity with Steve Wilks as their defensive coordinator, but Staley has done some truly, truly groundbreaking stuff with his defenses over the years. With the Rams in 2020, he introduced what they called the star position, which Jalen Ramsey played, and he was all over the secondary. He was playing even as a glorified linebacker, closer to the box, more like a nickelback at times, but he would just basically be deployed not as a freelancer, but as kind of a free play weapon in the scheme. And Staley obviously did it with great effectiveness. I wonder what the 49ers have in plan and if they can get the amount of talent they need to on the back end. If somebody like Isaac Yiadom really can play as well as he did in New Orleans, and it allows De'Vondre Lenore to move around, and then you've got Charvarius Ward, and hell, if they do pick up somebody like Simmons, who has played on the same team that Staley has coached for before, I think the sky is the limit schematically for the 49ers. I think that we could be seeing them do a lot of fun stuff defensively this year. And you know what? They need to. I mean, this defense needs to figure out a way to turn it around because this defense was bad last year. There's a reason they fired their defensive coordinator. There's a reason why Kyle Shanahan has shaken up this whole thing. I mean, take a look at this. This is a look at the 49ers roster right now in the depth chart. The teal represents the players that the 49ers have signed from the outside that were on different teams last year in free agency. As you notice, there's no teal on the offense up here. The only teals on the defensive side of the football. So the 49ers obviously said our defense was not good enough. We had to change leadership. We have to go back to basics, and we have to sign a bunch of new players on that side of the ball because there's going to be value there, and the floor of the defense needs to raise. That's what the 49ers said. They replaced a lot of players that they weren't particularly pleased with. So you've got this new look unit now, a bunch of new names for San Francisco. And with that new look unit, we will see what they can do moving forward. And we'll see if they can implement some of the vision that Brandon Staley brings over. It is Nick Sorensen's defense. He's the defensive coordinator. But I do think that we're already seeing big-time influence from Brandon Staley. Leonard Floyd played under Staley in Chicago, outside linebackers coach in the 3-4. That was Staley under Vic Fangio. That was several years ago. The Yetur Gross-Matos, I think his versatility is something that Staley will like because they like running these amoebic fronts, 4-3, 3-4. It's just, I think hard to get a grip on what the defense is doing. But Chris Kasarik, I guarantee you, loves Yetur Gross-Matos too because of his ability to rush on the inside like a Charles Omenihu or an Arden Key. De'Vondre Campbell is simply a veteran linebacker who was a pro. He was an all-pro a couple years ago. And, he says that he's got more in the tank. This to me is interesting. Look to see what De'Vondre Campbell said on Instagram. And I try to follow up on this a little bit. Packers people that I know said that this guy complains on social media a lot. But he said that someone is about to get a great football player that's been badly misused. Oh, well, let's get it, though. And then he puts the little shh. He's like, quiet. Don't tell anybody, except that he posted it on a public Instagram. So it's hard for people not to know. Supposedly, De'Vondre Campbell said the same thing after he left Atlanta a couple years ago. But he did deliver an all-pro season for Green Bay in 2021. So it does appear that he did put some money where his mouth was. He just hasn't been at an all-pro level over the past 2 years. Now, one thing about this is that the 49ers aren't asking him to be a world beater. He's either linebacker 2 or linebacker 3, depending on Dre Greenlaw's return. And so I call De'Vondre Campbell linebacker 2.5, linebacker 2.5. Just split the difference between 2 and 3. He says he's got more in the tank. And I mean, he didn't grade out terribly last year. He just wasn't as good as he was an all-pro. Speaking of that, I still remember snow game in Green Bay, divisional playoffs, 2021 season, snowy, icy, the snow globe. I call it that. Jimmy Garoppolo, who I like to bring stuff together, signs with the Rams today. Jimmy Garoppolo is getting ready to lead the 49ers down the field, and they're facing a big passing down. I think it might have been a second down. Could have been a first down too. But it's hard to throw in the snow. We get it. Garoppolo was hurt and all that too. But they had to have a passing play at this one juncture in time. And I remember the 49ers split George Kittle out into the slot, and they saw that the Packers were in man coverage, and it was De'Vondre Campbell in his all-pro season that covered George Kittle, who ran a slant to beat Campbell. Garoppolo hit Kittle, got that drive rolling. So maybe not the best news for the 49ers now. The pass coverage for De'Vondre Campbell, it was good that year, not on that play. It was good that year, but it's actually regressed over the course of the past 2 seasons. But again, they're not asking him to be the top linebacker. They're asking this guy to be the third linebacker 2.5. And he apparently does have some motivation if this Instagram post means absolutely anything. Talked about Chris Conley being a valuable re-sign. And then I talked about the big-time restructuring, $12 million of salary cap space left for the 49ers. If you want to see the salary cap sheet, it's right here. There's a lot of salary cap misinformation that went around today. But I'll tell you what, the 49ers are going to have over 40 million for sure. Right now it says 49 million, but once the Eric Armstead money comes in, the 18 million in savings, which is going to hit after June 2nd, they're in a good spot financially. And you know why they're in a good spot financially? Because they've managed this in a smart, responsible way. They didn't just go out there and sign everybody that they saw to begin this free agency period like Twitter wanted them to. The 49ers kept a balanced budget. Here's the balanced budget. Any spending that they added is highlighted in red. There's a lot of estimates here in italics because it's unclear what some of these cap hits are, but as they come in, I'm updating this sheet. Any money that they saved is highlighted in green, and then this spreadsheet adds it all up. But basically, the 49ers have added $36.01 million to their cap docket so far this year. But through the Kyle Juszczyk pay cut, the George Kittle restructure, the Javon Hargrave restructure, and the Eric Armstead release, designated as a post-June 1st release, the 49ers are set to save $36.19 million. So I want you to have a look at this. All those columns add up to something. It's these numbers that mean the most. Money added to the docket, 36.01. Money subtracted from the docket, 36.19. So the difference has been $180,000. This is all in millions, obviously. They're not dealing with $36. They're dealing with $36 million. But the 49ers are in the green. They have managed their money well. They do need to save their money because if you look at the salary cap sheet, I've got a tab that says 2025, and I could toggle to 2025. There is not going to be as much money next year, and they have a lot of spots to fill, and they have Brock Purdy to pay. Unused salary cap space carries over from season to season. Now, I will say this. Don't be fooled by this number right now, the $49 million to spend. They actually don't have $49 million to spend as we speak. The 49ers have about $12 million to spend, maybe less because some of these signings haven't been accounted for. But in the offseason, it's different than when I projected on the 53-man roster like this during the season. In the offseason, the top 51 contracts count against the salary cap, and they don't have the benefit of the Eric Armstead release yet. That was a post-June 1st release. The money is not going to come through the savings until June 2nd. Speaking of that, Eric Armstead, his thank you, we can read it right here. Armstead is now a member of Jacksonville. The 49ers posted their thank you to him, a little tribute video on social media. And Eric Armstead said, "For 1/3 of my life, I've been a Niner. A chubby little kid from Sacramento grew up and became a man in the Bay. I appreciate every moment of my time there. The ups and downs, they all made me who I am today. I've met so many amazing people who have had a huge impact on my life. I'm so grateful that God put me right where I needed to be for 9 years. To my teammates, I want to thank you, as the bonds we built are unbreakable and what I will cherish the most. Thank you to the amazing York family for entrusting me with so much. I hope I represented you well. Thank you to all the staff, from the head coach to facilities personnel. Buildings don't make places special. People do. Thank you to the best coach I've had, Chris Kasarik. You have changed my life. Last but not least, Niner faithful, thank you for your support, cheers, passion, and inspiration. I felt all of it." Signed, Eric Armstead. That's Eric Armstead's thank you to the 49ers fans. And I think that we should sit down, slow down, and just realize the totality of this moment. This guy was drafted by Trent Baalke in 2015. think pick number 17 in 2015. It was in the late teens. He went through the darkest of times because 2015 was the year after Harbaugh left. So that was a low, right? Jim Tom Sula followed by Chip Kelly. He went through the bad times of the pre-Shanahan regime. He was there for the really dark ages of the Shanahan regime at the start, where the 49ers started, 0-8, 0-9? That's when I started covering the team. I didn't see a 49ers win until about 10 weeks into the season. We'll put it that way. He was there for the Super Bowl run in 2019, which there was elation, but then there was devastation after the 49ers lost. He was there for the COVID year in 2020, and that was after the 49ers entrusted him with the big contract, which I think Eric Armstead absolutely lived up to. I mean, he was out there and he turned into a star player. And 2019, Chris Kasarik is the one that he credits for turning him into the star player. Chris Kasarik unlocked his potential in between 2018 and 2019. But that earned Eric Armstead his money in 2020. And he turned into a monster out on that field. 2021 especially was an absolutely marquee Eric Armstead season. In 21, he started at the edge, and he was this guy who was like Yetur Gross-Matos is going to be for the 49ers. Lined up on the edge on base downs, but he moved inside on some of these passing downs. The Niners' run defense was just getting squashed in early 2021. That season started off poorly. They were 3-5. Then I think that happened with the loss to the Arizona Cardinals, 3-5. So right around that time of the season, the 49ers said, you know what? We're seeing our defense just get run over. They're getting steamrolled. This isn't good. They needed to figure out a way to stop the run. This very similar problem that the 49ers face right now, actually. And the main move they did was they moved Eric Armstead from the outside to the inside. They moved into defensive tackle. The 49ers ended up, they were number 20 in run defense at the time. They ended up as the league's number 1 run defense. And that was spurred by Eric Armstead move to the inside. That season, they went to Green Bay. They played against the Packers. That was the snow game I was talking about. Eric Armstead had one of the most monstrous performances that you'll ever see from a defensive lineman. Multiple sacks, big-time run stopping. I mean, just that big, long, powerful frame was just absolutely dominant. Absolutely dominant. He really did turn into a superstar in his prime, and it's really unfortunate that the plantar fasciitis, the chronic foot condition, took hold the next year in 2022. Because to close that 2021 season, Eric Armstead was a special player. So I think it's really important to just sit back, take time, and realize this is awesome. This was a hell of a run. I mean, he went through all of this with the 49ers up until that second Super Bowl loss that happened just over a month ago. And there was a lot of misrepresentation of Eric Armstead. It was like, oh, they picked him over DeForest Buckner. I think in many ways, Eric Armstead was a better player than DeForest Buckner, especially after the moment of that trade. He was better against the run. He fit the 49ers system a lot better. And it was never about Armstead or Buckner. It was about Armstead and about 2 other players the 49ers were able to retain because of the cap savings and DeForest Buckner. You could be upset about the fact the 49ers picked Javon Kinlaw, who didn't work out with the pick. That has nothing to do with Eric Armstead. 49ers made the right choice in keeping Eric Armstead. This guy played extremely good football for them. He contributed to the community. And one more time, his thank you came out today on social media. So that's what happened today. 49ers still have 22 roster spots open. What a day it was. We're going to look back on this one, I think, as one of the marquee days of free agency for the 49ers. They are truly, really, they're trying to work on the margins. They're trying to do what a good front office does if it already has an elite roster. And I will excitedly watch what happens next. Everybody, thanks for watching. That is your weekly recap. We'll talk to you very soon.